Working on a new project is actually requiring a side project. So for this flashlight, I need to make a new head for it. But in order to do that on my lathe, I need to modify the DRO so I can do some very accurate depth plunging. So that's what I'm working on. A couple of steps over to the workbench. Let's see what kind of caliper I have. Oh, it's kind of a cheapy one. I think it'll be fine. But I think it's a 6-inch caliper. As it turns out, the lathe I have only has a 4-inch depth for the tailstock. The plastic I found just in my spare parts bin, it's a little bit gummy, but actually that'll work out fine. I kind of want it grippy so it'll grab onto the rod of the tailstock. That should be fine. I didn't really think about this too much, which, you know, that's what you gotta do sometimes. It is, I got the dimensions a little bit wrong, so I ended up having to attach the base of the caliper to the end that squishes the mobile end of that thing right there. Sometimes planning is a good thing, but in little cases like this, sometimes I do like to experiment with just jumping into a project and seeing what happens. It's problem solving in action, shall we say. So running a 1/4-20 bolt through this guy to squish it onto the ram. And then, what I got? Oh, that 1/4-20 right there. How about that? That's really good timing. So you can kind of see how this is pretty gummy stuff. It'll work out fine. There's a couple of 1032 screws in there. It's got a decent amount of surface area for those screws. It'll be fine. It's another a huge amount of stress. So speaking of stress, let's clamp our cast iron doodad into, you know, jaws of death here. It's all an angle, so it's not easy to grip. So first order of business is making a flat. So this is where the grippy part is attaching to the ram. You might notice here there's a shocking amount of like Bondo body filler kind of stuff on this. The casting must have been quite poor, but you can see it there. It's kind of that reddish stuff. It is everywhere. So there's a good part of my tailstock that is Bondo. It doesn't hurt the functioning at all. The good thing about cast iron, it is grungy to work with, but it is certainly easy to drill. As long as you're careful with the tapping, it'll be quite fine. And here I should have pulled out my 400mm long tap, but this will work fine. So here's an interesting little thing. I had the brilliant idea of, I'll blast this thing off with my cutoff saw. A few seconds in, I realized it was because of the gummy nature of the plastic. It just kind of melts away instead of cutting. It wasn't the most option. And even sanding here, it just kind of burns away. So as long as I had a real light touch, it turned out fine. I would have been happier, and I did other cuts later on with this process with just my little hand saw. So measuring here. And again, this was done kind of in an afternoon sort of thing, so I'm just holding things together. If I was being fancy, you know, things would be clamped and whatnot, but we're just making stuff work. I think it was about this time as well I decided to use power tools for subsequent operations. So now I doublified it, so that gives a lot more area for the, and this is the head, the reading head. That's what goes on that section. And see, yep, power tools. It's a good thing. I think I took that bracket on and off about a dozen times. Speaking of that, I probably took this tailstock off about a half a dozen times. It's a lot easier to remove the caliper than it is to remove the tailstock. So I'll go over this a little bit more detail at the end, but I did my best when I was putting this together to align things properly, perpendicular to the bore, parallel to the ram, that sort of thing. So in order to get things square and parallel and whatnot, I did find out right about this time that the beam of the caliper wasn't quite square with the ram. So I had to shim up the head of where that rail goes on. A few more refinements and I think this is ready to attach for good. So at this point, the support system for the caliper is done. Tailstock can go on for the last time. We do need to modify the brackets a little bit, so that's what I'm doing here. This is what's holding the reed head to the beam of the caliper itself. Ooh, we get to angle grinder action. I think this is making the shim for the far end of the beam. Actually worked out quite nicely. So this is the final time attaching the caliper. And of course, every time I see this, every time I use this, I'm going to see that the open end is facing the wrong way. It's not going to hurt the functioning at all. It's just one of those silly things. I should note, the holes that look like through the flat face, those are just divots. They're not all the way through, so all the screws are full depth. And spitting it out. So yeah, they're right there is about the limit of that ram. It's about 4 inches. So I guess I could have actually cut the end of that cut the end of the caliper, the beam off a little bit, but I didn't. So here's where I made the classic mistake. I put a gauge on it to see how accurate my work was. I jest, but so this turns out to be roughly 5 to 7 thousandths out in about 4 inches. That's not ideal, but honestly, in the overall scheme of things, I'm not building aerospace quality things. I'm generally building flashlights or woodworking projects, oddball things that are okay with being less than 8 thousandths of an inch out. You know, that's only 2 pieces of printer paper or whatnot. But still, it is annoying. I wanted it to be a little bit better. But I would like to hear from you guys. If you see what I did wrong, it's very obvious that I'm just not seeing it. I would love to hear your thoughts on that one. But at the end result, it does work fine, and I can read it. And for somebody who's slightly dyslexic, reading dials is sometimes problematic. A dial face like a watch, that's no problem at all for me. But rotating dials, especially on some of the things where they're 4 thousandths of an inch increments, it's a little bit difficult. So having a digital readout for me is worth the slight loss in accuracy. Crappy to say, but that's the world we live in. That's the world I live in. But overall, I am happy with it. So we could continue. And that's a wrap. So this little simple project is now done, so I can continue and making this into a flashlight head. So that is the next project. I almost forgot the most important part. Now it's official. Thank you for staying till the end of this video. And yes, I would like to hear from you if you know that I did something strange on this one to get that little bit of inaccuracy. I'd love to hear from you. Have a good one.